If you are aspiring to be a CISSP or a certified information systems security professional, then this video is definitely for you. Well, cryptography is a method for securing the data and communication through codes. It protects the data at transit and the data at rest. It ensures that your communication is not intercepted or it's not visible to anyone else who, even if they get hold of your traffic, they cannot see anything. And cryptography ensures that only the intended receivers can read and processes the message that you are sending. Does this image seem familiar? That's the perfect example of end-to-end encryption. It has been implemented by WhatsApp. What it does is that your chat messages, your calls, your photos, your videos that are sent over WhatsApp cannot be read by anyone else, not even the employees of WhatsApp, not law enforcement agencies, not hackers, no cyber criminals have access, or not even cyber criminals would be able to read the messages that are being sent through WhatsApp. And how is that possible? Because the messages have been encrypted. They have been encrypted by using the fundamentals of cryptography. And that is our topic for discussion in this video. Cryptography plays a major part when you're preparing for CISSP. You see, CISSP has 8 different domains that you can see on the right hand side, and the value that each of these domains has is mentioned on the left hand side. For example, the domain number 3, which is the security architecture and engineering, this domain has 13% of weightage in the overall certification of CISSP. And cryptography is one of the modules of domain 3. Let's look at domain 3 and zoom in on it a little bit. If you look at this list, this is the entire list of modules for security architecture and engineering as a domain. In this entire list, you would find that module number 9 has apply cryptography. What I find interesting about the names of all of these modules is that all of them begin with a verb. That means all of these modules, you are supposed to work on this, not just study, but practice. This is the things, this is the stuff that we need to practice, and we need to do this because we are studying these fundamentals in CISSP not to be good at CISSP, but we are studying all of this so that we can be better security professional outside. Because when you are certified by CISSP, your words have value. Your opinions will be heard with respect. And at the same time, when you apply for an interview and you have the CISSP certification, your CV has that added advantage as well. So if you have been thinking about going for CISSP, should I go for the exam? Is it worth it or not? Listen to me. Trust me on this. CISSP is definitely worth doing if you are serious about doing a career in cybersecurity. Now, let's take a deep dive into the 9th module, which is the apply cryptography. So what does cryptography give us? It gives us all of these. Confidentiality, that is, that data has been converted from plain text into ciphertext. So anyone who has access to that data cannot understand what it means. So the confidentiality of your data is intact. The next part is integrity. Integrity comes into picture that what if someone not only intercepts the data, but they are modifying it and they are sending it across. Let's say you sent out a request to your bank to transfer $2,000 and someone intercepts that message, adds an additional zero and makes it $20,000. What happens then? The integrity of your message would be lost. However, by using cryptography, We can also ensure that no one is able to alter these messages, and if anyone is trying to do that, that can be identified very easily. The next component is the authenticity. And that authenticity is because we can use cryptography to ensure that only a certified person, or the message can only be sent by someone who has been authenticated by the system, and no random user can start sending encrypted messages, which is also a reason why people start putting faith into the messages that they are receiving, because they can be assured that these messages are being sent by an authenticated person. And the next one is non repudiation. Hey, if you sent out a mail that please purchase X amount of inventory for $2,000, and the next day when the order has been purchased, then you say, hey, I never sent that email. So who sent that email? If you are using cryptography, in that case, with the help of the encryption schemes, we can ensure, or we can prove, that the message was indeed sent by a user, and that cannot be done without the user knowing about it, which also helps us to prove non repudiation. And last but not the least is the access control. Access control is very important, because when you have sensitive data available in your system, you would definitely want to ensure that you control who has access to this data and who cannot access this data. And by using cryptography and by using authentication and authorization, we would be able to control who can access this data. So that is those are the main services that have been provided by cryptography. So is this really being used? I mean, is someone using cryptography? Is it a niche system, or is it something that is being used at a very common level? Well, the answer is it's being used at a very common level. When you are logging in to your mailbox, you are logging into your computer, you are logging in anywhere, they are not the your computer system is not sending your password to the server. Your computer system is going to use cryptography, turn your password into a code, and send that code to a server. If the code matches with the code that is assigned for your profile, then you are able to log in, and that is how authentication is working because of cryptography. Then comes the secure browsing. Well, for secure browsing, let me take you there. Here I have opened up the certificate for google.com. This expires on 16th of June 2020, and this certificate is valid, as you can see here. What it means is, as the certificate is valid, which means the requests that I am sending to Google have been encrypted, and which is why I would be able to put my trust in this transaction or while accessing google.com. And this is available, this component is being used as widely as you can think. We just looked at the example of WhatsApp, which uses the end-to-end encryption. Digital signatures. Well, the digital signatures can be used to ensure that when you are sending out an email, you are digitally signing these emails and sending it out, proving that these are accompanied by a token or a signature that can only be created by you, because you hold the key or the private key to that digital signature. Then we have been hearing a lot about the cryptocurrencies like Bitcoin, and cryptocurrencies have been on a boom, and the core component of cryptocurrencies is crypto. That's the cryptography. Cryptography is being widely used in the cryptocurrencies. And last but not least is the blockchain, because blockchain also relies heavily on cryptography to ensure that when we have different blocks of information that is being encrypted, that is linked to each other to create a chain, it creates a level of trust, and it also has its own tracking mechanisms which will be used. So blockchain also uses cryptography. And when it comes to cryptography, there are basically two types. Cryptography can be used where it has the same key being used for encryption and decryption. It's very similar to the lock at your home. You have one key. With that key, you open the lock, and using the same key, you lock it as well. In a very similar manner, whenever you are using symmetric cryptography, you will be using the same key for encrypting the data and for decrypting the data. Now, there are two different types of symmetric cryptography. The first one is block cipher, and the second one is stream cipher. And both of them have their own advantages as well. For example, if you have a bigger file, you can you can slice that bigger file into smaller chunks of data and start encrypting individual blocks of that data, and that becomes your block cipher. It's not as simple as I just explained. There are much more different types of block ciphers. We will be taking a deep dive into the block ciphers and other ciphers as we see them in the next videos or the upcoming videos. Stream cipher is when we are going to encrypt the data bit by bit. In stream cipher, what we are doing is we are we are changing the position of the individual bits. We are also adding the additional key that is being used to encrypt to the message. So in a stream cipher, you will find that one of the most common applications is the media applications, where the media applications want to be secured to secure the stream. So there we don't have the ability to slice the data into the blocks. We would rather do it in a stream. And at the receiver's end, when you are receiving the entire stream of data, the receiver would be able to take out the key or to decrypt this data in a faster manner. The main advantage for using a symmetric cryptography is the performance, because when if you want to encrypt a file of, let's say, 5 GB, you would want it to be done as fast as possible, as quick as possible. That is performance. And if you are using the same key for encryption and decryption, then the amount of time it takes to convert a plain text into ciphertext and the vice versa is very less, which is why it's all about the keys, and symmetric cryptography is all about performance. Asymmetric cryptography. Well, before I go to asymmetric cryptography, there is an issue in cryptography which is symmetric, and that issue is single point of failure. What if an attacker gains hold of your encryption key? Then the attacker can gain access to the entire data. You would find that there is we have asymmetric cryptography where we have public key and we have private key, and a lot of times this set of keys are being used so that we can exchange these private keys, and both the sender and the receiver can come up with the actual encryption key, so that in SSL you would find it uses asymmetric encryption and symmetric encryption together. Asymmetric cryptography, it's also known as the PKI or public key algorithms, and this in asymmetric cryptography you have public and private keys, which means there will be one key that will be used for encryption and another key that will be used for decryption. The advantage of asymmetric encryption is that it's all about the safety, that because there are two different sets of keys, where a public key is known to everyone whereas a private key is known only to the owner. So if I have an account and I have a set of keys, my private key will only be known to me and my public key will be known to everyone, maybe through my digital certificate. Let's now look at some of the basic terms of cryptography. Well, CISSP is a mile wide and an inch deep kind of a certification. So you would be exposed to many different terminologies in each of the domains, and within the domain, each of the modules will have its own keywords as well. In cryptography, I'm going to explain to you a few functions or a few keywords that will be of very interest to you, specifically when you're studying this particular chapter or domain. The first one is the hash function. The important thing that you should remember about the hash function is that it's a one-way function, which means if you have a plain text and you compute a hash of that function, in that case you will get a fixed length hash value, but you cannot get the original text back from that hash value, which is something you can do with encryption, where encryption and decryption is a two-way function, whereas hashing is a one-way function. The next important thing to remember is that it doesn't matter what size of input you give. If you give just a 3 characters or if you give an entire 1 GB of file, the output of the hashing function is going to be of the same fixed length. Hashing functions are mainly used for checking the integrity, because if the original message changes or if you change the message, then the hash will also change, which means if someone has tampered with the message that is being sent out, in that case it's very easy to detect that tampering because of the hash value that is being sent. Some of the common hashing algorithms that you would come across are MD5 and secure hash 1 or secure hashing algorithm 1 or 2. It is interesting to see that NIST had held a competition so that all the cryptographers will come together and they will find a suitable replacement for the secure hashing algorithm 2, and they did come up with a secure hashing algorithm 3. It's called as the Kerchak algorithm, which is used as the next version of SHA. It has been proposed by NIST. Now let's look at the next important function, which is digital signature. In digital signature, what we are doing is we are using the public key cryptography methods, which is the private key and the public key. In this case, if you have a message, let's say an email, in that case you would create an MD5 hash or any other hash of that message. You would encrypt that hash with your private key and send it over to the receiver. When the receiver receives the file and the hash and let's say the message authentication code, or also known as your digital signature, the receiver will try to decrypt your digital signature with your public key, which means when the receiver is receiving all the content, he is going to receive your public key, your digital signature, and the actual file. Remember, the actual file is not being encrypted, it is the hash that is being encrypted here. When the receiver decrypts the hash or your digital signature using the public key and the hash of the file matches with the decrypted hash, in that case it is confirmed that there has been no tampering and the file is intact. Digital signature is a feature that you can use in Microsoft Word as well, and it's quite popularly used over there. And this particular function also strengthens the trust of the signer. And when you're signing this form or when you're signing any document and sending it across, then the receiver also has a strengthened trust in the entire process. The next term you should know is the digital certificate. This one is quite common because we see these certificates all the time. In a digital certificate, you would find that there is always an issued to name. I have taken the example of wikipedia.org here, and it says star.wikipedia.org, which means it could be www, it could be mail, it could be security.wikipedia.org. Any domain which has the top level domain of wikipedia.org can use this certificate. This certificate is an SSL certificate. Its unique identification is the serial number that you can see in the screenshot. And this certificate has been issued by a certificate authority. And in order to ensure that the certificate is valid and it has not been tampered, they have given the SHA-1 and SHA-256 fingerprint of this certificate as well, which means when your browser receives the certificate, your browser is going to compute the hash and compare. Now, a certificate is issued by a certificate authority. A certificate authority is a trusted third party. A trusted third party that you trust, that is your browser trusts, as well as the server that you're trying to access. That server also trusts this certificate authority. And this certificate authority also maintains something called as a CRL, certificate revocation list. If there are any certificates where the CA has a suspicion that the private key has been leaked or the information provided is not valid, they can revoke that certificate and add the serial number into a global list called as the CRL. As soon as the serial number appears there, that certificate is no longer valid globally. And a digital certificate or the certificate authority will follow the standard of X.509. Please remember that X.509, that's the format of the certificate that is being used for creating these certificates. Some of the common CAs you will find are Komodo, Symantec, and Digitrust. There are many more, but these are the ones that came off the top of my head. Cryptanalysis. Cryptanalysis is the study of the ciphertext to find patterns. We are looking for patterns in the ciphertext. We have no idea of what was the plain text. We have no idea what the algorithm was or what the key could be. Purely looking at the ciphertext, we are trying to find patterns. Back in the early days, people used to sit down with a pen and paper and started doing these things manually. However, now we have advanced functions such as integer factorization that are used by computers and supercomputers to break cryptological code. When you're looking at cryptanalysis, there are three different dimensions on which it can be measured. Number one is the time, number two is the memory, and the number three is the data. How much time are we going to need to find those patterns? How much amount of memory would be needed to find those patterns? And what is the length of the sample data which you would need? Is there just one page of data is fine, or do you need X amount of data? That is a minimum requirement for doing the cryptanalysis. So cryptanalysis is very interesting. Next is the collision. Collision happens when two different a hash function generates the same hash for two different texts. Let's say there is an algorithm of MD5 and I give that algorithm the input as Aniket, and it gives me a hash of 12345. When I give the text as CISSP, if the hash function gives me the hash value as 12345, then we have a collision. Work factor is quite important because work factor identifies what is the amount of complexity in your system. If someone was to do cryptanalysis and to use different methods to break the code that you have created, how much time and how much effort is needed from them, that is the definition of work factor. In a good implementation of cryptography, the work factor will always be high. So friends, thank you so much for watching my video on cryptography and some of the basic terms. I would be posting some more content on this topic soon. Please stay tuned. If you like this video, please click on the like button. You can share it with your friends as well. And if you like the content that I'm creating and you want more and more videos like these, please subscribe to my channel so that you get a notification whenever I add a new video. So thanks a lot for giving your valuable time and watching my video. I'll see you next time. Thank you.